I never thought I'd be the kind of grandmother who didn't trust her own family. For 63 years, I'd lived by a simple principle. Family comes first, always. But that was before the Tuesday afternoon that shattered everything I thought I knew about the people living under my roof. My name is Margaret Chen, and I need to tell you this story because it's been eating me alive for months. What happened in my kitchen that day changed not just my life, but exposed a darkness I never imagined could exist in my own home. It started innocently enough. My son David and his wife Jessica had been living with me for almost 2 years, ever since David lost his job at the architectural firm downtown. They had my granddaughter, Emma, who was 7 years old and the absolute light of my life. Those big brown eyes, that gap-toothed smile, she was everything good in this world. I told them they could stay as long as they needed. My house was paid off, and after my husband Robert passed 5 years ago, the rooms felt too empty anyway. Having them there brought life back into the old Victorian. Emma's laughter echoing through the hallways. David's terrible attempts at fixing things he should have just called a professional for. Even Jessica's quiet presence in the kitchen, it all felt like family should feel, or so I thought. The day everything changed was a Tuesday in late September. I remember because Tuesdays were my volunteer days at the community center, teaching ESL classes to new immigrants. I'd been doing it for years. It gave me purpose, kept me sharp. But that particular Tuesday, my student Maria had canceled last minute. Her daughter was sick, so instead of being gone until 4 in the afternoon, I came home just after lunch. I pulled into the driveway at 1:47 p.m. I remember checking my watch, thinking I'd have time to start prep for dinner before Emma got home from school at 3:30. David was at a job interview finally, after months of applications, and Jessica should have been at her part-time position at the dental office where she worked as a receptionist. But her car was in the driveway. I felt the first whisper of unease then, though I couldn't have told you why. Maybe it was the way the house seemed too quiet as I approached. Maybe it was some grandmother's instinct I didn't know I possessed. Or maybe, deep down, I'd been noticing small things for weeks and had been too afraid to add them up. I let myself in through the front door, calling out, "Jessica, are you home, dear?" No answer. The house had that peculiar quality of feeling occupied but silent. You know what I mean when you can sense someone's presence but can't quite locate them. I set my purse on the entryway table and walked toward the kitchen. My sensible flats, barely making a sound on the hardwood floors. Robert and I had refinished 30 years ago. That's when I heard it. A soft clattering sound, like someone trying very hard to be quiet but failing. It came from the kitchen. I pushed open the swinging door and froze. Jessica stood at the island counter, her back to me, hunched over Emma's pink and purple lunchbox, the one with the unicorns that Emma had begged for at the start of the school year. She was so focused on whatever she was doing that she hadn't heard me come in. "Jessica?" I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She spun around so fast that she knocked over a small glass bottle. It rolled across the counter, and I watched, almost in slow motion, as she lunged to grab it before it fell to the floor. Her face had gone completely white, her eyes wide with something that looked horribly like panic. "Margaret!" Her voice came out too high, too bright. "I didn't. I thought you were teaching today." Maria canceled. I took a step closer, my eyes moving from her face to the counter. Emma's lunchbox was open. Inside, I could see a sandwich cut into triangles, the way Emma liked, some baby carrots, and a small container of what looked like yogurt. "What are you doing?" Just packing Emma's lunch for tomorrow. Getting ahead, you know, trying to be more organized." Her hand closed around the small bottle she'd grabbed, and she moved it behind her back, but not before I caught a glimpse of it. A brown glass bottle, small, the kind you'd find in a pharmacy or health food store. "What's that?" I asked, pointing to her hand behind her back. "What's what?" But her eyes betrayed her. They darted to the side, avoiding mine. "Jessica." I used the voice I'd perfected raising 2 children of my own firm. No nonsense. The voice that said, "I'm not playing games." "What's in your hand?" For a long moment, she just stared at me. I could see the calculations happening behind her eyes, the rapid weighing of options. Then her shoulders sagged slightly. It's a supplement for Emma. She's been so tired lately, and I read that iron deficiency is common in children her age, so I've been adding a little to her food." She brought her hand forward, holding out the bottle like a peace offering. I took it from her, my hand steady even though something in my chest had started to feel very, very wrong. The label was handwritten in neat block letters. "Ferrous sulfate solution." "Why are you adding it secretly?" I asked, keeping my voice level. "Why not just give her a children's vitamin like normal people?" "She won't take pills. You know how she is, she gags on anything bigger than a Tic Tac. This way, she doesn't even know she's getting it. It's better for everyone." It sounded reasonable. It really did. And maybe if I hadn't spent the last few months noticing small things I'd been pushing to the back of my mind because they didn't make sense, because they made me feel crazy, I might have accepted it. But I had noticed things. I'd noticed how Emma had been getting paler, more listless, how she'd started falling asleep right after school, when she used to bounce through the door full of energy, demanding snacks and wanting to tell me about her day. I'd noticed how she'd been complaining about stomach aches, about feeling dizzy, about her legs hurting. I'd mentioned it to David and Jessica 2 weeks ago. Jessica had waved it off, said it was probably just a growth spurt, that kids went through phases. David had agreed, distracted by his job search, trusting his wife to handle medical concerns the way he always did. I'd even suggested taking Emma to the pediatrician just to be safe. Jessica had said she'd make an appointment but kept putting it off, always finding a reason why that particular day didn't work. And now here she was, secretly adding something to Emma's food. "How long have you been doing this?" I asked quietly. Jessica's eyes flickered. "Just a couple of weeks. Since you mentioned she seemed tired. Can I see the bottle again?" She hesitated, then handed it back to me. I turned it over in my hands, examining it more closely. The handwritten label was neat but generic. No pharmacy label, no dosage instructions, no warnings. "Where did you get this?" I asked. "A health food store. Online. I don't remember exactly." Her words were coming faster now, tumbling over each other. "Margaret, you're making this into something it's not. I'm trying to help Emma. That's all. I'm her mother, and I'm trying to help her." The way she said it, "I'm her mother," it was almost offensive. Like she was reminding me of my place. I was just the grandmother. Jessica was the mother. She had the right to make decisions about Emma's health care. Except something about this felt profoundly wrong. "I'd like to take Emma to the doctor," I said, my voice still calm but firm. "Tomorrow, just to have her checked out, make sure everything's okay." "That's not necessary." "Yes, it is." I met her eyes directly. "Jessica, Emma is not well. Anyone can see that. Whether it's iron deficiency or something else, she needs to see a doctor. Tomorrow." We stood there in my kitchen, I reminded myself, in my house in a silent standoff. The afternoon sun streamed through the window above the sink, illuminating dust motes in the air between us. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere outside, a dog barked. "Fine," Jessica said finally, her jaw tight. "If you insist. But you're going to feel foolish when the doctor says she's perfectly healthy." "I hope I do feel foolish," I told her honestly. "I hope the doctor laughs at me for being an overprotective grandmother. Nothing would make me happier, but I didn't believe it." And from the look in Jessica's eyes, a kind of cold, calculated hardness I'd never seen there before, neither did she. She left the kitchen without another word, brushing past me with enough force that I had to steady myself against the door frame. I heard her footsteps on the stairs, then the sound of her bedroom door closing. Not slamming, but closing with a firmness that was almost worse. I stood there, holding the brown bottle, my hands beginning to shake now that I was alone. Something was very, very wrong. I should have thrown the bottle away. I should have poured it down the sink and forgotten about it. But instead, I found myself unscrewing the cap and sniffing cautiously at the contents. It smelled wrong. Not like iron supplements, which I'd taken myself during my pregnancies. This smelled faintly chemical, almost bitter, with an underlying sweetness that made my stomach turn. I closed the bottle and slipped it into my cardigan pocket. Then I did something I never thought I'd do. I searched my own kitchen like a detective, looking for evidence of what? I didn't even know. But I looked anyway. In the trash under the sink, beneath coffee grounds and vegetable peelings, I found an empty bottle. Same brown glass, same handwritten label, but this one said something different. Concentrate, dilute, before use. My heart started beating faster. I pulled out my phone and did something else I never thought I'd do. I took pictures of the bottle in my pocket, of the empty bottle from the trash, of Emma's lunchbox still sitting open on the counter. Then I texted my daughter, Rachel, who lived 3 hours away in Boston. "Can you talk? It's important." She called within 2 minutes. Rachel was always reliable that way. "Mom, what's wrong? Are you okay?" And suddenly, saying it out loud made it real in a way it hadn't been before. "I think Jessica might be hurting Emma." The silence on the other end of the line stretched for so long I thought the call had dropped. "Mom," Rachel said finally, her voice very careful, very controlled, her lawyer voice. "That's a serious accusation." "What exactly do you mean?" So I told her. About Emma's symptoms, about Jessica secretly adding something to her food, about the bottles and the strange behavior and the way Jessica had looked at me in the kitchen like I was an enemy instead of family. "Could it be Munchausen by proxy?" Rachel asked. She'd always been the smart one, always reading medical journals and true crime books, where a parent makes their child sick for attention. "I don't know what it is," I admitted, "but Rachel, I'm scared, really scared. What if I'm right? What if Emma's been getting sick because Jessica's been doing something to her?" "Okay, listen to me, Mom. Do not confront Jessica again. Do not let on that you suspect anything. Act normal. Can you do that?" I think so." "Good. Tomorrow you take Emma to the doctor like you planned. But Mom, take that bottle with you. Give it to the doctor. Let them test it. And," she paused, "Mom, you might need to call the police." "The police?" "Rachel, I can't. David would never forgive me if I—" "Mom," Rachel's voice was gentle but insistent, "if Emma is being poisoned, and I'm not saying she is, but if she is, then she could die. Do you understand? This isn't about David's feelings or keeping the family together. This is about Emma's life. I closed my eyes, feeling tears prick behind my eyelids. When did everything get so complicated? I don't know, Mom, but you're strong. You can do this for Emma. After we hung up, I stood in my kitchen for a long time, just breathing. The house was still too quiet. I could hear the old pipes creaking, the way they did every afternoon. The sound used to comfort me. Now it felt ominous. At 3:30, I heard the school bus pull up outside. I went to the front door, pasting on a smile I didn't feel. Emma came trudging up the walkway, her little backpack dragging behind her. She looked so small, so pale, dark circles under those beautiful brown eyes. When had they gotten so pronounced? "Hi, Grandma," she said, her voice lacking its usual enthusiasm. "Hi, sweetheart." I crouched down my knees, protesting the movement, and pulled her into a hug. She felt thinner than she should. Frailer. How was school? Tired. She leaned against me, and I could feel the exhaustion radiating from her little body. "Why don't you go rest on the couch? I'll bring you some apple slices and we can watch your show." She nodded and trudged inside, and I followed, my heart breaking with every slow step she took. This was not normal. This was not a growth spurt or a phase or anything benign. My granddaughter was sick, and I was increasingly certain I knew why. That night at dinner, I watched. I watched everything. Jessica had made spaghetti Emma's favorite. David had come home from his interview in good spirits, talking about the company and the people he'd met and how he thought he had a real shot at the position. Emma picked at her food, managing only a few bites before pushing her plate away. "Come on, Em," David said, his voice gentle. "Just a little more. You need to eat." "My tummy hurts," Emma said quietly. Jessica stood up abruptly. "I'll make you some toast. Sometimes bland food is easier when you're not feeling well." I watched her go into the kitchen. I watched through the open doorway as she put bread in the toaster. Watched as she pulled something from her pocket so quick I almost missed it and added a few drops to the butter she was spreading. My blood ran cold. "I'll take that to her," I said, standing up so fast my chair scraped against the floor. Jessica turned the plate in her hands, surprise on her face. "It's fine. I've got." I said, "I'll take it." I walked to her and took the plate from her hands, not roughly but firmly. Our eyes met, and I saw it again, that coldness, that calculation. "Of course," she said finally, her voice tight. "Whatever you prefer, Margaret." I brought the toast to Emma, watching as she nibbled at it half-heartedly. I didn't let her eat much, just enough that it wouldn't seem suspicious. Then I took the plate back to the kitchen, and when no one was looking, wrapped the remaining toast in a paper towel and slipped it into a plastic bag. Evidence. More evidence. That night, I barely slept. I lay in my bed, the bed I'd shared with Robert for 40 years before cancer took him, and stared at the ceiling, my mind racing. If I was wrong, I would destroy my family. David would never forgive me for accusing his wife of something so heinous. Jessica would rightfully be furious. They'd move out, and I'd lose my son and my granddaughter. But if I was right, and I did nothing, Emma could die. The choice wasn't really a choice at all. At 8:30 the next morning, I called Emma's pediatrician. Dr. Sarah Kim had been seeing Emma since she was born. I liked her. She was thorough, kind, and didn't talk down to patients or their families. Dr. Kim's office. "This is Brenda speaking." "Hi, Brenda. This is Margaret Chen, Emma Torres's grandmother. I need to make an urgent appointment for Emma today, if possible. Is this an emergency? Should you take her to urgent care?" How did I explain this? I think she might be being poisoned. The silence on the other end was deafening. Mrs. Chen, if you believe a child is in danger, you need to call 911 or, please, I interrupted. Just, can Dr. Kim see us today? I have evidence. I have samples. I just need someone medical to look at this and tell me if I'm crazy or if I'm right. Another pause. Then, can you be here at 11? Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much. The next step was convincing Jessica to let me take Emma alone. I found her in the kitchen, always the kitchen. I noticed now making Emma's lunch for school. Jessica, I'm taking Emma to Dr. Kim at 11. She looked up, her expression neutral. I'll come with you. No. I kept my voice firm. David has his second interview today at noon. You should go with him. You know he's nervous about these things. I can handle a simple doctor's appointment. I could see her weighing this. The truth was, David didn't need Jessica at his interview, but the excuse was plausible enough, and I was counting on her not wanting to make a scene. I should be there, she said, but there was uncertainty in her voice now. I'm her mother, and I'm her grandmother, and I've taken children to the doctor more times than I can count. Jessica, please, let me do this. You support David. The battle played out across her face. Finally, she nodded. Fine, but call me right after. I want to know what the doctor says. Of course. At 10:30, I got Emma out of school early, signing her out with the excuse of a doctor's appointment. The school secretary barely looked up. It was routine, normal. Emma held my hand as we walked to the car, her small fingers cold in mine. Grandma, am I really sick? I don't know, sweetheart. That's what we're going to find out. Mom says I'm fine, that I just need more vitamins. My jaw tightened. Well, let's see what Dr. Kim says. The drive to the pediatrician's office took 15 minutes, but it felt like hours. Emma dozed in her car seat, fell asleep within 5 minutes, which was not normal for a 7-year-old at 10:45 inches the morning. Dr. Kim saw us right away. She was in her late 40s, with kind eyes and an efficient manner that had always put me at ease. Mrs. Chen, Emma. She smiled at my granddaughter, who had woken up groggy and confused. Why don't you hop up on the table, Emma? I want to check a few things. While she examined Emma, listening to her heart, checking her reflexes, looking in her eyes and ears, I pulled the bottles from my purse and set them on the desk. Dr. Kim glanced over, her expression neutral, but I saw her eyes sharpen. The examination took 20 minutes. Dr. Kim was thorough, asking Emma questions about how she felt, what hurt, when she felt worst. Emma answered in her small, tired voice, describing stomach aches and headaches and feeling dizzy sometimes. Finally, Doctor, Kim stepped back. Emma, sweetheart, why don't you play with the toys in the corner for a few minutes? I need to talk to your grandma. Once Emma was occupied with a play kitchen in the corner, her back to us, Dr. Kim picked up the bottles. Tell me everything, she said quietly. So I did. All of it. The secret addition of supplements to Emma's food. My suspicions, the changes in Emma's health over the past few months. Dr. Kim listened without interrupting, her face growing more serious with each detail. When I finished, she nodded slowly. I'm going to run some blood tests, comprehensive ones, and I'm going to send these bottles to a lab for analysis. She paused. Mrs. Chen, are you aware of what ferrous sulfate is? Iron supplement, right? In therapeutic doses, yes, but in high doses or the wrong formulation. She chose her words carefully. Iron poisoning is serious. It can cause exactly the symptoms Emma's been experiencing: nausea, stomach pain, fatigue, pallor. In extreme cases, it can cause organ damage, even death. The room spun slightly. Hearing it said out loud by a medical professional made it undeniably real. So I might be right. She might be poisoning her. I'm not making any accusations yet, Dr. Kim said firmly, but Emma's symptoms are concerning, and they started around the time you say Jessica began this supplementation. I'm going to draw blood now, and we should have preliminary results by this afternoon. Full toxicology will take longer. She drew several vials of blood from Emma's arm, talking cheerfully to distract her from the needle. Emma was so tired she barely reacted. I want to keep Emma here for observation, Dr. Kim said as she labeled the vials, just for a few hours, until we get those initial results. Is that acceptable? Yes, absolutely. And Mrs. Chen, Doctor, Kim met my eyes directly. If these tests show what I think they might show, we'll have to call Child Protective Services. And the police. Do you understand? I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. Does Emma's mother know you're here? She knows we're at a doctor's appointment. She doesn't know about the bottles or my suspicions. Dr. Kim nodded. Don't tell her, not yet. Let's see what the tests say first. The next 3 hours were some of the longest of my life. Emma and I stayed in the examination room. A nurse brought her juice and crackers, and Emma ate a little, then fell asleep on the exam table. I sat in the chair next to her, watching her chest rise and fall, praying that I was wrong, that this was all some terrible misunderstanding. My phone buzzed with texts from Jessica. How did the appointment go? What did the doctor say? Margaret, please respond. I'm worried. I texted back non-committal responses. Still here, running some tests. We'll call soon. At 2:47 p.m., Dr. Kim came back in. One look at her face told me everything. Emma's iron levels are critically high, she said quietly, glancing at my sleeping granddaughter to make sure she wasn't listening. Dangerously high. This isn't from a normal supplement regimen. This is consistent with intentional overdosing. The world tilted. Are you sure? My voice came out as a whisper. I'm sure, Mrs. Chen. I've already called CPS and the police. They're on their way. Emma needs to be admitted to the hospital immediately for treatment. She's in acute iron toxicity. Her liver function is already showing signs of stress. Oh my God. I put my hand over my mouth, feeling bile rise in my throat. Oh my God. Rachel was right. She was poisoning her, her own daughter. I'm so sorry, Dr. Kim said, and she looked like she meant it. But you did the right thing bringing her in. If this had continued much longer, she didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. 2 police officers arrived at 3:15, a male officer in his 50s and a younger female officer. They introduced themselves as Officers Martinez and Chen. No relation, Officer Chen joked weakly, trying to lighten a situation that couldn't be lightened. I told them everything again, showed them the pictures on my phone. They took the bottles as evidence, having me sign some paperwork confirming where I'd found them and when. Mrs. Chen, Officer Martinez said, his voice gentle but firm, we're going to need to go to your house and speak with Jessica Torres. We'd like you to come with us, if you're willing. Emma will be taken to Children's Hospital by ambulance. Dr. Kim and a nurse will accompany her. She's in good hands. But we need to do this now, before Mrs. Torres is alerted and potentially destroys evidence. I looked at Emma, still sleeping on the exam table, looking so small and vulnerable. Okay, I whispered, let's go. The drive back to my house felt surreal. I sat in the back of the police cruiser, not under arrest, but it felt that way nonetheless. Officer Chin kept up a stream of gentle conversation, asking about Emma, about how I'd figured it out, treating me like a concerned grandmother instead of a woman who was about to destroy her own family. When we pulled up to my house, Jessica's car was still in the driveway. David's wasn't. He was still at his interview, unaware that his world was about to implode. Mrs. Chen, Officer Martinez said, turning in his seat to look at me. This is how we're going to do this. You'll go in first. Normally, like you're just coming home. We'll follow a few minutes behind. If you could leave the front door unlocked, that would be helpful. We don't want to give her time to barricade herself or destroy evidence. My hands were shaking. What if she runs? We'll be right outside. She won't get far. He paused. Are you okay to do this? Because if not, we can find another way. I thought about Emma in the ambulance being rushed to the hospital. Emma, who loved unicorns and wanted to be a veterinarian when she grew up. Emma, who had been slowly dying in my house while I made dinner and watched TV and assumed everything was fine. I can do this, I said. I got out of the car and walked to my front door on legs that felt like jelly. The key stuck in the lock it always did. I kept meaning to get it fixed, and I had to jiggle it twice before the door opened. Jessica, I called out, trying to keep my voice normal. I'm home. She appeared from the kitchen, always the kitchen, her expression concerned. Finally, I've been so worried. Where's Emma? What did the doctor say? Emma's resting in the car. She fell asleep. The lie came easier than I expected. Jessica, can you come help me with something? She followed me to the front door. And that's when Officers Martinez and Chen came up the walkway, their badges visible, their expressions professional and neutral. Jessica stopped dead. The color drained from her face so quickly I thought she might faint. Jessica Torres, Officer Martinez said. Yes? Her voice was barely audible. I'm Officer Martinez. This is Officer Chen. We need to speak with you about your daughter, Emma Torres. Where is she? Jessica's eyes darted to me, then back to the officers. Margaret, where's Emma? She's at Children's Hospital, I said, and I was surprised by how steady my voice was. Being treated for iron poisoning. Jessica's face went from white to gray. I don't understand. Iron poisoning? But she needed supplements. I was just trying to help. Ma'am, Officer Chen interrupted gently, we'd like you to come down to the station to answer some questions. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. No. Jessica backed up, shaking her head violently. No. This is a mistake. I would never hurt Emma. Margaret, tell them. Tell them I would never hurt my daughter. But I couldn't say that, because I didn't believe it anymore. Mrs. Torres, Officer Martinez said, his voice firmer now, we need you to come with us. We can do this calmly and quietly, or we can make it official with handcuffs. Your choice. Jessica turned to me then, and the look on her face, it was betrayal, rage, and something else. Something that looked almost like relief. You did this, she whispered. You couldn't just mind your own business. You had to interfere. Emma was dying, I said, my voice shaking now. You were killing her. Your own daughter. You don't understand. Jessica's voice rose to a near shriek. You don't understand anything. Then explain it to me, I said. Make me understand why you would poison a 7-year-old child, your child. For a moment, I thought she might actually tell me right there. I could see it warring on her face, the need to justify, to explain, to make someone understand. but Officer Martinez stepped forward, effectively breaking the moment. Mrs. Torres, let's continue this conversation at the station. Margaret, we're going to need you to come down as well to give a formal statement. They put Jessica in handcuffs. She didn't resist, just stood there with tears streaming down her face, silent now, and loaded her into the patrol car. I watched from my porch, this house that had been in my family for 40 years, and felt like I was living in someone else's nightmare. A detective arrived at the house while I was giving my statement to another officer. Detective Sarah Williams was in her mid-30s, sharp-eyed and efficient. She spent 3 hours processing my kitchen as a crime scene, bagging evidence, taking photographs, asking me questions about routines and schedules and where Jessica kept things. They found more bottles in the cabinet above the refrigerator, in Jessica's bathroom, in her nightstand. Different concentrations, different formulations. Some labeled, some not. All of them containing dangerously high levels of iron compounds. How long has this been going on? Detective Williams asked me as we sat at my kitchen table, where we'd eaten family dinners and celebrated birthdays and pretended everything was normal. I think maybe 6 months. That's when Emma really started seeming off, but I only caught Jessica 3 days ago. Detective Williams nodded, making notes. You did the right thing. You might have saved Emma's life, but it didn't feel right. It felt like I detonated a bomb in the center of my family. David came home at 4:30, walking in to find his house full of police officers and his mother sitting at the kitchen table looking shell-shocked. Mom, what the hell is going on? Where's Jessica? Where's Emma? I had to tell him. Had to watch his face go from confusion to disbelief to horror as I explained. His wife, his daughter, poison. That's insane, he said, shaking his head violently. That's absolutely insane. Jess would never, Mom. Are you sure you didn't misunderstand? Maybe she made a mistake with the dosage. Maybe it was an accident. It wasn't an accident, David. My voice was gentle but firm. The police found more than a dozen bottles, different formulations. This was systematic, deliberate. But why? His voice broke on the word. Why would she do that to Emma, to our daughter? I don't know, I admitted, but I'm going to find out. They kept Jessica overnight at the station. She lawyered up immediately, as Detective Williams informed me the next morning, so she wasn't talking. Emma stayed in the hospital for 3 days, receiving chelation therapy to remove the excess iron from her system. They kept me updated. Rachel had driven down and was helping me navigate everything, and the news was cautiously optimistic. Emma would recover. Her liver function was improving. She'd been lucky. Lucky. What a word to use for a child who'd been systematically poisoned by her own mother. David was a wreck. He stayed at Rachel's hotel, unable to be in our house, unable to face me. I understood. I'd turned his world upside down. Even if I'd been right, even if I'd saved Emma's life, I'd still destroyed his family. On the 4th day, Detective Williams called me. Margaret, I think you need to come down to the station. Jessica's lawyer called. She wants to talk to you. To me? Why? She says she'll only explain what happened if you're there. She says you deserve to know. Part of me didn't want to know. Part of me wanted to leave it a mystery. Let the police sort it out. Focus on Emma's recovery. But the larger part, the part that had raised 2 children and buried a husband and lived through 6 decades of joy and heartbreak, needed to understand. I needed to know why. The interview room at the police station was exactly like you see on TV, gray walls, a metal table, uncomfortable chairs. Jessica sat on one side with her lawyer, a tired-looking woman in her 50s. I sat across from them with Detective Williams beside me. Jessica looked terrible. Her hair was unwashed, dark circles under her eyes, her hands shaking as they rested on the table. When she looked up at me, I saw genuine misery in her face. "Margaret," she said, her voice hoarse, "I need you to understand. I never wanted to hurt Emma." "Then why did you?" The question came out harsher than I intended. Jessica took a shaky breath. Her lawyer put a warning hand on her arm, but Jessica shook her head. "I need to say this." She was quiet for a long moment, gathering her thoughts or maybe her courage. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Do you know what it's like to feel invisible?" I blinked. Whatever I'd been expecting, it wasn't that. For 6 years of our marriage, I was the perfect wife, the perfect mother. I kept the house clean, I made meals, I supported David's career, and for 6 years, he barely saw me. He loved me, I guess, in his way, but he never really noticed me. She looked up, meeting my eyes, and then we had Emma, and suddenly David had someone new to focus on, someone who needed him, who lit up when he came home, who worshiped him. And I understood she's his daughter. Of course she should come first. But, her voice cracked, but then she got sick, just a little cold when she was 3. And for 2 weeks, David was present, really present. He came home early from work. He sat by her bed. He held her. And for the first time in years, he looked at me like I mattered, because I was the one taking care of her, the one he needed to consult about medications and doctor's appointments. Horror was beginning to dawn on me, but I couldn't speak. I needed to hear this. When she got better, everything went back to normal. David went back to being distant, working late, obsessed with his career, and I was invisible again. Jessica wiped at her eyes with the back of her hand. "Then he lost his job, and we had to move in with you. And I thought maybe this would bring us closer, but it just made everything worse. So you made Emma sick." My voice was flat, emotionless. "To get attention." "Not at first," Jessica's voice rose, desperate. "At first, I really was just giving her supplements, iron, like I said. But then I noticed when I gave her a little too much and she felt queasy the next day, David was concerned. He actually talked to me. He asked my opinion. He saw me." She was crying now, tears streaming down her face. It wasn't supposed to be serious, just enough to make her a little tired, a little pale, enough that she'd need extra care, enough that David would come home and ask how she was doing and actually listen to my answer. But it escalated, Detective Williams said quietly. Jessica nodded miserably. The more tired she got, the more attentive David became, the more he relied on me. For the first time in our marriage, I felt needed, important, like I mattered. She looked at me with red, swollen eyes. "And then you started noticing. You started asking questions. You wanted to take her to the doctor. And I knew if you did, they'd find out. They'd take her away from me. They'd take David away from me. I'd lose everything. So you increased the doses," I said, my stomach churning. "You made her sicker. I thought if she got worse, you'd back off. You'd let me handle it. You'd trust that I knew what I was doing as her mother." Jessica's hands were shaking violently now. "I never meant for it to go so far. I never wanted to really hurt her. I just wanted my husband to love me, to see me, to need me." The room was silent except for Jessica's quiet sobbing. I thought about all the psychology articles I'd read over the years. Munchausen syndrome by proxy, where a caregiver makes someone sick for attention. I'd read about it in magazines, seen it on those medical mystery shows, but I never imagined it happening in my own family. To my own granddaughter. You could have killed her, I said finally, my voice shaking with barely controlled rage. Your own daughter? For what? I know. Jessica's voice was broken. I know, and I'll never forgive myself. But Margaret, you have to understand, I wasn't thinking clearly. I was so lonely, so desperate to matter to someone. And Emma has always been fine, resilient. I thought she could handle it. I thought I was being careful. Careful? The word exploded out of me. You were poisoning her. Systematically. Deliberately poisoning a 7-year-old child. Your child. I know, Jessica screamed back, her composure finally cracking completely. I know what I did. I know I'm a monster. But I never meant, I never wanted. She dissolved into incoherent sobs, her whole body shaking. Her lawyer put an arm around her, shooting me a look that was part warning, part pity. Detective Williams touched my arm gently. Margaret, maybe we should take a break. But I wasn't done. I leaned forward, my hands flat on the table, and stared at Jessica until she looked up at me through her tears. Did David know? I asked. Did he have any idea what you were doing? No. Jessica shook her head violently. God, no. David would never. He loves Emma more than anything. He'd die before he'd let anyone hurt her. She laughed bitterly, which I guess makes this even worse, doesn't it? I was hurting the person he loves most in the world, and he had no idea it was me. How did you get the iron compounds? Detective Williams asked, making notes. Online. Health supplement sites. Some of them don't ask questions if you pay in cash. I had them delivered to my office at the dental clinic. Jessica wiped her face. I did research. I knew what doses would make her sick, but not kill her. I was always so careful about the amounts. Until you weren't, I said coldly. Until you pushed it too far and nearly gave her liver failure. Jessica flinched like I'd struck her. I didn't know it had gotten that bad. She seemed tired, but not. I thought I was controlling it. I thought I knew what I was doing. You're not a doctor, Detective Williams said. You're a dental receptionist with internet access and a need for attention. You were playing with your daughter's life. I know. Jessica's voice was barely audible now. I know what I am. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. I couldn't be in that room anymore. Couldn't look at Jessica's tear-stained face and feel anything but rage and disgust. I have one more question, I said, my hand on the door. If I hadn't caught you, if I hadn't come home early that day, how long would you have kept going? Jessica looked at me, and for a moment I saw something terrifying in her eyes. Not remorse, not shame, but uncertainty. Like she genuinely didn't know the answer. I don't know, she whispered finally. I honestly don't know. I left the room before I said something I'd regret. Before I did something I'd regret. The next few weeks were a blur of legal proceedings, hospital visits, and family devastation. Jessica was charged with child abuse, reckless endangerment, and assault. Her lawyer tried to argue for diminished capacity, for psychiatric evaluation, for understanding that she'd been suffering from untreated mental illness. The prosecutor wasn't sympathetic. A mother had systematically poisoned her own child for months. Intent didn't matter as much as outcome, and the outcome had nearly been fatal. Emma recovered physically. The chelation therapy worked. Her iron levels returned to normal. Her liver function improved. Within 2 weeks, she was back to being an energetic 7-year-old, the color returning to her cheeks, the spark returning to her eyes. But the emotional recovery was going to take much longer. "Where's Mommy?" she kept asking. "Why can't I see Mommy?" What do you tell a 7-year-old? How do you explain that her mother, the person who was supposed to protect her, was the one who'd been hurting her? Child Protective Services assigned us a therapist, Dr. Patricia Martinez, who specialized in trauma in young children. She met with Emma 3 times a week, using play, therapy, and art to help her process what had happened. "Don't give her all the details yet," Dr. Martinez advised me and David. "At her age, she doesn't need to know the why. She just needs to know that she's safe now, that what happened wasn't her fault, and that the adults in her life are going to protect her." I don't even know how to describe what David was. Shattered doesn't seem adequate. His wife had poisoned his daughter. His mother had caught her. His entire reality had been revealed as a lie. He moved back into my house. Where else would he go? But he barely spoke to me for the first week. When he finally did, we sat at the kitchen table late one night, both of us unable to sleep. "I should have known," he said, staring into his coffee cup. "I should have seen it. I'm her father. How did I not know?" "Because you trusted your wife," I said quietly. "Because normal people don't assume the person they love is capable of something like this." "Were there signs?" He looked up at me, his eyes desperate. "Looking back, were there things I should have noticed?" I thought about it carefully. Maybe. The way Jessica always wanted to be the only one to prepare Emma's food. The way she discouraged doctor's visits. The way she seemed almost energized when Emma was sick. But David, these are tiny things. Easy to miss. Easy to explain away. "I was so focused on finding a job," he said, his voice breaking. "On getting us back on our feet financially. I thought I was being a good provider. I didn't realize I was neglecting my family." "This isn't your fault," I told him firmly. "What Jessica did, that's on her, not you. She made a choice, day after day, to hurt Emma. You didn't make her do that." "But she said," he stopped, swallowed hard. "She said she did it because I wasn't paying attention to her, because she felt invisible. Doesn't that make it partially my fault?" "No." I reached across the table and took his hand. "David, listen to me. Lots of people feel neglected in their marriages. Lots of spouses feel invisible or unappreciated. They don't poison their children. They go to marriage counseling. They have difficult conversations. They leave if they have to. But they don't hurt an innocent child to get attention. That's not normal. That's not okay. And it's not your responsibility." He cried then. Really cried. In a way I hadn't seen since he was a little boy. I got up and hugged him. This grown man, my son, and held him while he sobbed out his guilt and grief and confusion. Rachel stayed for 2 weeks, helping to manage everything. She was a godsend, organizing legal documents, dealing with insurance companies, making sure Emma got to her therapy appointments. Having both my children under my roof again reminded me of easier times before marriages and jobs and the complexities of adult life. "How are you doing, Mom?" Rachel asked me one evening while we were cleaning up after dinner. Emma was watching TV in the living room. David was in his room. "You've been so focused on everyone else, but this has to be affecting you too." "I'm angry," I admitted. "I'm so angry at Jessica I can barely think straight, and I feel guilty." "Guilty? Why?" Because I didn't figure it out sooner. I had months where I noticed Emma wasn't well but accepted Jessica's explanations. What if I'd pushed harder earlier? What if I'd insisted on a doctor's visit months ago? How much suffering could I have prevented? Mom, stop. Rachel turned to face me fully. You're not psychic. You couldn't have known. And when you did suspect something, you acted immediately. You saved Emma's life. I destroyed our family. No, Jessica destroyed it when she started poisoning her daughter. You just exposed the truth. Rachel hugged me tightly. You did the right thing, the brave thing, and that's what matters. The trial took 8 months to get to court. Jessica's lawyer tried every delay tactic possible, but eventually we had our day in court. I testified, the hardest thing I've ever done, sitting in that witness box with Jessica, staring at me from the defense table, recounting how I discovered what she was doing, how Emma had gotten sicker and sicker, how I'd found the bottles and taken them to the doctor. David testified, his voice hollow as he described his daughter's deterioration, his own blindness to what was happening in his home. Dr. Kim testified about Emma's condition when I'd brought her in, about how much worse it could have been if we'd waited even another week. The toxicologist testified about the iron compounds Jessica had been using, about how the doses she'd been administering were dangerously high, about how the different formulations suggested someone with at least basic chemistry knowledge deliberately creating a poisoning regimen. Emma didn't have to testify, thank God. She was too young, and the judge ruled that her recorded interviews with the child psychologist were sufficient. Jessica's defense put a psychiatrist on the stand who diagnosed her with Munchausen syndrome by proxy, with untreated depression and anxiety, with attachment disorder stemming from her own childhood. They painted a picture of a deeply troubled woman who'd never meant to cause real harm, who'd been driven by psychological compulsions she couldn't control. The prosecutor countered with evidence of premeditation, the online purchases, the research into dosing, the escalating amounts as Emma built up tolerance. This wasn't impulse or mental illness. This was calculated, deliberate. The jury deliberated for 2 days, guilty on all counts. Jessica was sentenced to 15 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 10. She also permanently lost custody of Emma, with no visitation rights until Emma turned 18 and could decide for herself if she wanted contact. When the verdict was read, Jessica didn't react. She just sat there, staring straight ahead, her face expressionless. But as they led her away, she turned and looked at me, not with hatred like I expected, with something that looked almost like gratitude. Later, her lawyer told me that Jessica had left me a letter. I almost didn't read it, but Rachel convinced me that I needed closure. Dear Margaret, I know you'll never forgive me. I don't expect you to, and I don't deserve it. What I did was unforgivable, monstrous. I ruined Emma's childhood. I traumatized my daughter. I destroyed my marriage. I destroyed myself. But I need you to know something. When you caught me that day in the kitchen, part of me was relieved. I'd been spiraling for months, going deeper and deeper into something I couldn't control. The doses were getting higher. Emma was getting sicker. And I knew, on some level, that I was losing control, that I was going to go too far. If you hadn't stopped me, I think I would have killed her, not intentionally, but through negligence, through miscalculation, through my own desperate need to be seen, and I would have had to live with that for the rest of my life. You saved Emma, but in a way, you saved me too. You stopped me before I became a murderer. I know I'm going to prison. I know I deserve it. And I know that Emma is better off without me in her life. But please, Margaret, when she's older, when she asks about me, tell her that I loved her. In my own twisted, broken way, I did love her. That's what makes this so awful. I loved her, and I hurt her anyway. Tell David I'm sorry. Tell Emma I'm sorry. And thank you, Margaret, for being braver than I ever was, for doing what needed to be done. Jessica, I read the letter 3 times, then put it in a box in my closet. Maybe someday Emma would want to see it. Maybe not. Either way, it would be her choice. It's been 2 years since that terrible Tuesday when I came home early and found Jessica in my kitchen. 2 years since my world turned upside down. Emma is 9 now, thriving in 4th grade. She's back to her energetic, joyful self. Loves horses. Wants to be a marine biologist instead of a veterinarian now. Has a best friend named Sophie who comes over most weekends. She still sees Dr. Martinez once a month and probably will for a while longer. But she's healing. She knows what happened now. We told her, age appropriately, about a year ago, that her mother had been sick in her mind, and that sickness made her do things that hurt Emma, that it wasn't Emma's fault, that sometimes adults make terrible choices, even adults who are supposed to love and protect us. She cried. She was angry. She went through a phase where she had nightmares and wouldn't eat anything she hadn't seen prepared from start to finish. But slowly, with therapy and time and love, she's moving forward. She asked once if she could write to Jessica. We told her she could when she's older, if she still wants to. But for now, no contact is better. Healthier. David got a job about 6 months after the trial, a good one, at a firm that values his skills. He's been seeing a therapist too, working through his guilt and his grief over his marriage. He's dating someone new, actually a woman named Lisa who's a teacher at Emma's school. It's early, but it seems healthy. Lisa knows everything that happened, and she's patient with David's cautious approach to trust. He and I have repaired our relationship. It took time. He needed to be angry at me for a while, needed to work through the complicated feelings of being grateful I saved Emma while also grieving the destruction of his marriage. But we got there. We're family. We always will be. We still live in my house, all 3 of us. David talks about getting his own place eventually, but for now, this works. Emma loves having her grandma around. I love making her breakfast and helping with homework and hearing about her day at school. Rachel visits once a month, usually with her husband and my grandson, Tyler. Family dinners are loud and chaotic and full of life. Sometimes I think about Jessica in prison. I wonder if she's getting help, if she's dealing with her mental health issues, if she regrets what she did or just regrets getting caught. Her lawyer sends updates occasionally. She's been a model prisoner, taking classes, working in the prison library. Good for her, I suppose. But I can't find it in myself to care much one way or the other. My concern is Emma. My focus is on making sure she grows up knowing she's loved, safe, and that what happened to her was not her fault and will never happen again. People ask me sometimes, friends, people at the community center, even strangers who've seen the news coverage, how I knew, how I figured out what Jessica was doing when her own husband didn't. The truth is, I almost didn't. I almost accepted Jessica's explanation about the iron supplements. I almost dismissed my concerns as an overprotective grandmother interfering where she didn't belong. But something grandmother's instinct, years of parenting experience, or maybe just dumb luck, made me trust my gut. made me push when it would have been easier to back down, made me act even though it meant potentially destroying my family. And yes, I did destroy the family as it was. But I saved the family that mattered most. Emma, David, and me. We're building something new now. Something honest. Something healthier. Last week, Emma asked me, "Grandma, do you ever wish you hadn't found out?" I thought about it carefully before answering. No, sweetheart, because the way things were, you were getting hurt, and I would rather live with hard truths than comfortable lies. She thought about that, then nodded. Me too, I think. Besides, I added, hugging her close, the way things are now isn't so bad, is it? She grinned that beautiful, gap-toothed grin, though the gaps are filling in now as her adult teeth come in. No, Grandma, it's pretty good. And you know what? It is. We're not perfect. We're still healing. Emma will probably carry scars from this for her whole life. David still has nightmares sometimes about what could have happened, and I still feel that sick twist in my stomach when I think about those months when Emma was slowly being poisoned under my own roof. But we survived. We're together, and we're building something real. That day in the kitchen, when I found Jessica adding drops to Emma's food, I made a choice. I chose truth over peace. I chose action over comfort. I chose to believe my instincts, even when it meant tearing apart everything I thought I knew about my family. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. It was also the most important. Jessica wanted me to regret exposing her. She thought, maybe hoped, that destroying our family would be punishment enough for me, that I'd be consumed by guilt and second guessing. But here's what Jessica never understood. I didn't destroy our family. She did. I just had the courage to name it. And yes, I made her regret what she did. The police, the trial, the prison sentence. That was all because I chose to act. Because I chose Emma's safety over family harmony. Would I do it again, knowing everything I know now? Knowing the pain it would cause David, the trauma Emma would have to work through, the awkward questions from neighbors, the news coverage, the permanent fracture in our family tree, in a heartbeat. Because at the end of the day, Emma is alive. She's healthy. She's happy. She gets to grow up and become whoever she's meant to be, and that is worth everything.